back. We've got a lot of topics on the table here: the economy, the politics of the economy. We haven't talked too much about what's going on in Davos. Bob and I discussed that. I'm here and available to discuss it with you if you'd like. We're watching the actually, I think the whole conversation about what's happening in Hungary with Viktor Orban and all that was arguably related to all this. You know, the international order is changing as a result of populism, and I would argue that the populism is a response to the disintegration all around the world in developed countries of the middle class, as the predatory class, as the overclass, as the top 1%, keeps taking more and more and more and more. And one of the ways that the top 1% are going to cement their control, and certainly have in countries like China and Iran and Saudi Arabia, is by locking down the internet. If you lock down the internet, you shut down the lines of communication. You can make it harder for people to use social media. You can limit the reach of social media. You make it harder for people to get their message out. You can even, you read everybody's email. You can track everything everybody's doing. You know all about them by what they're searching on. There's so much you can learn about individuals that you can use against them, or that you can keep them from knowing if you can control the internet. And that's why, when President Obama was president, Tom Wheeler, his FCC commissioner, said, we are going to establish that the internet is a public utility. And we are going to regulate it under the same provision that we regulate telephone companies. So if I call Louise, my phone company does not have the legal right to listen to my conversation. They don't have the legal right to say, hey, they're talking about business. We're gonna raise the cost of that call. We're gonna start charging them 3 cents a minute. They don't have the legal right to say to me, if I'm going to call my wife versus, somebody who I know or whatever, well, that call is going to cost more than this call, or that call is going to go faster, this call is going to go slower, that kind of thing. They don't have that legal right because they're regulated under Title II of the Telecommunications Act. Phone companies are. And what Tom Wheeler said was internet companies will be regulated under that too. Internet service providers, the equivalent of the phone company, the company that brings the internet into your home. They cannot mess with your internet. They cannot monitor your internet. All they can do is charge you for how much of it you use, just like the phone company can charge you for how much arguably, most of them have gone to unlimited minutes, but they can charge you for how long you talk. That's it. And of course, Ajit Pai, the former Verizon lawyer, who is now the chairman of the FCC, blew that up and said, no, Comcast and AT&T and every other company, they can do whatever they want. They can throttle you, they can jack up your price, they can slow down your service unless you pay extra. And there is a way out of this. And the way out of this is by having Congress overrule the FCC commissioner. And it takes 50 votes, 51 votes in the Senate, and 200, I think it's 19 votes in the House. That's all it takes. And the votes are there. Susan Collins just provided the 51st vote in the Senate. And in the House, it would be every Democrat and probably a third, if not a half of the Republicans. But Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan are refusing to bring, it's called a Congressional Resolution of Disapproval under the Congressional Review Act. Congress can reverse the actions of any of the departments in the executive branch, including the FCC. So they can simply say, Ajit Pai, we don't like what you did, it's undone. We go back to what we had, the rules that we had under Tom Wheeler. And I think it's really interesting that this is picking up so much steam now that big transnational corporations, I think Yum Foods owns Burger King. It's like it is a giant company. These giant corporations like Burger King are jumping on the bandwagon, trying to explain net neutrality to Americans. In this new ad that Burger King has rolled out, I'm just, this blows my mind, that net neutrality has become something that you can sell Whoppers with. In this new ad that they roll out, they start out by asking a bunch of people, what do you know about net neutrality? And of course, every single person has no idea what net neutrality means. And then they do to burgers what Comcast, Verizon, AT&T, and whatnot want to do to your internet, which is Oh, you pay more, you get it faster. If you pay less, you get it slower. If you know, we're gonna filter this, and then at the very end, of course, everybody says, oh, now I get it. In fact, here's just a little excerpt from the ad so you can hear it and see what I'm talking about.
You got the Whopper? Yeah. So you got the slow access Whopper pass?
Wait, what?
It's on the menu right there with the fast, medium, and slow. Slow Mbps, fast Mbps, or hyper-fast Mbps. Mbps, of course, standing for making burgers per second. Burger King Corporation believes that they can sell more and make more money selling like chicken sandwiches and chicken fries, so now they're slowing down the access to the Whopper. Whopper neutrality was repealed. They voted on it.
Whopper what?
This doesn't make any sense.
I felt like I was being taken advantage of in a sense. Just as a customer coming in to get their food, it felt like a power move.
They already changed the policies overnight or whatever.
I didn't think that ordering a Whopper would really open my eyes up to net neutrality.
You got the Whopper? Yeah. So you got...
Yeah, and it goes on like that. You're going to have to wait 10 seconds before I can hand you this Whopper. And it's just great. And this is what we need to be doing, is contacting our members of Congress. Now, you know, like I said, we've got enough in the Senate, but Mitch McConnell won't allow a vote because, you know, the Republicans are in the pockets of the big corporations. The big corporations are making them rich. Mitch McConnell won't allow a vote. Paul Ryan won't allow a vote. We need to absolutely raise hell about this because it will pass. It would pass right now. Congress would overturn Ajit Pai, the Verizon lawyer who now runs the FCC. You know, Trump is putting industry people in virtually every position. You know, if you want to look at well, they just made the head of HSS, you know, the former guy who used to run Pfizer. You know, it's just pick an industry. You know, if you got a regulatory agency that overlooks coal and oil, they put a coal and oil executive in there, or somebody beholden to one, you know, and on it goes. So they did the same thing with the FCC. It's so corrupt. I mean, this administration, the Trump administration, is blindingly corrupt. They are more corrupt even than the most corrupt administration in the history of the United States, the Reagan administration, that had more senior officials prosecuted and convicted for crimes than any other administration in the history of the United States. I predict that the Trump administration is going to beat Reagan's record in terms of corruption. And, you know, the only thing, frankly, you know, that I believe that we can do is to push back at the level of our politicians, which means calling Congress, calling your members of Congress, calling your members of the House, calling your members of the Senate, and saying, we want that vote on that resolution for disapproval. Vote to bring back net neutrality. Vote to disapprove the FCC under the Congressional Review Act. This is the phrase, vote to disapprove the FCC under the Congressional Review Act. And if we can get these members of Congress, and like I said, right now, it's Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell blocking this thing. Give them a call and just say, we want net neutrality. You know, this is like the last media thread that is hanging before basically everything is overwhelmed by just, you know, I mean, basically 6 companies right now own the vast majority of the newspapers, magazines, radio stations, and television stations in the United States, and networks. 6 companies, 6 corporations. And, you know, in the internet world, it's basically 3 large corporations. Probably one day soon it'll be 2 or 1. I mean, but basically, even when you're down to 3, that's functionally a monopoly, if it's not literally a monopoly, a triopoly. It is, there's no competition there.